Hi, I'm Tam,
And I'm eternally mortal.
and this is the Hidden Egg Podcast where we talk about vulnerability
And stuff. And things.
and articles on Medium.com. This is season 4, right?
Yep. Yes.
Episode 6, I believe.
7. It's
7? Is this
7.
really already 7?
This is already 7.
Wow. This week's theme is female or women's struggles, things
Yep.
that pertain specifically to women. Now we have some shout outs. Oh, have some fun with picking up your food, Ben. I had
Yep.
some
Enjoy that
Chinese over
food.
the weekend. It was delightful. Um,
Yeah. Enjoy that grub.
so we have a few shout outs that we want to say first, but they don't. I don't think they necessarily like. I don't think they have anything to do with the theme.
No, they were a little off topic.
Yeah,
Which is kind of why they became shoutouts because they're three
right.
pretty
They
awesome
are
articles
they are
to be
pretty
awesome.
vulnerable.
I
Yeah.
mean, to be honest, to be awesome. Um,
So the
but
first one, what?
go ahead. Go ahead.
First one is from the Sturge. Surprise. He comes out with some really good stuff. This one's
Totally.
The Art of Discrimination at a Truck Stop.
Yeah. The subtitle being just make sure you look the right way when traveling, or else you might be asked to leave for no reason.
Yeah, and it's about a recent experience that he had at a truck stop where he and his well, are they
Part,
husband
part,
partner?
partner,
They
partnership.
were discriminated against and asked to leave.
Yeah, and rightfully so. Pissed Sturge off, and Sturge
Right.
wrote a very well worded article, an article that really lets you feel what happened from my perspective, and I was impressed. It was very good.
And then we
Yep.
have one from Richard Morel, which I'm not very familiar with this person. I think they're new. And it's a poem called Upon Learning of Garen's Passing. And it
Subtitle.
was. What?
I was just gonna do the subtitle.
Oh, okay.
Is that okay if I keep doing that?
Yeah.
He helped me at the time I needed it most.
Yeah, and honestly, when I read it, I didn't really pick up poem vibes, but that's okay. I liked it for whatever it was. The story and the way it flowed and how the intentionality behind it, like you can just feel. I don't know. I just felt kind of like I was there with him in third grade, going through that experience and then meeting this Garen person.
Yeah, it's amazing what one interaction, even if brief, can do to help shape who we are. I certainly have people that I only hung out with for a brief period of time in my distant youth.
There's
That
this one girl that I only knew for like 2 weeks before she moved again, that she's the whole reason why I know that I'm bisexual. Because she was a lesbian. And she was like, well, I'm a lesbian. And I'd never even considered like being able to be attracted outside of girl boy.
right,
So 2 weeks. 2 weeks, and she made this enormous impact on my life of just causing me to question, am I attracted to women? I don't know. So yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
And this definitely reads as like a free form poem to me, and it was breathtaking. Like I genuinely came to tears over it. Like it was very good. Sorry, I'm kind of low energy today, folks.
We both are.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
irony about us doing the theme of women's suffering or women's issues is I'm having my own suffering right now that is very, very female. So, yep,
Hmm.
did
Good
not
times.
good times. It's fantastic. All right, so the other shout out is to You Good's very recent article, just came out a few hours ago, called Shot to the Heart.
Yeah. And this one also made me cry. Very, we've had we've had to take pets into vets for the final time. not too terribly long ago, and not to ruin parts of the article, but like there was some very relatable material in here that like immediately hit me, and it was just incredibly like I felt it through and through. And it doesn't that's not all the article's about. The article's about more than just that.
Yeah, it's actually about a pet that is currently still alive and kind of responding to her anxiety about being in the same place. And I
Hmm.
totally get that.
Yeah, and it's delightful, really, when you get to see your pet try and protect you or take care of you and stuff like that. Because, like, most pets usually get around to that. They usually care enough about their master that, like, they see them as part of the hierarchy that they live by and try and do their best for them, you know?
I
We
was
had a
a
cat that used to bring us birds, you know?
Oh yeah, and squirrels. Um,
Mm.
I ended up kind of being a little bit of an asshole because I was like, you might want to work on that because I don't think it's healthy for the dog to feel anxious every time it goes to the vet. But at the same time, I was like, have you considered like getting the dog registered or trained as an emotional support dog because obviously it can tell when you're anxious and it's very sensitive to that. So like with a little bit of training, he can help her with that part of her life and it be a more healthy kind of exchange.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I feel the same direction about it because, like, she's just experiencing her
Yeah,
life as is, and the
that's
dog is
fair.
just reacting in a way that a friend does, Like, we're friends, and when either one of us are in pain, it affects the other. You know what
Yeah,
I
that's
mean?
that's true. But I'm
But I
also in
understand that there's
therapy.
true, absolutely, as am I.
So,
Um,
there's a middle area. And I'm not saying that she has to do any of these things. Just kind of putting it out there cuz it could be a good idea or it could be a terrible idea. I don't know.
right, you just had
I
thoughts and
just had
shared them.
thoughts. So,
Absolutely.
our first article of the day, are you ready? You ready
Yeah,
for
let's get
this?
into it.
Is what is premenstrual dysphoric disorder and why don't we know more about it?
Subtitle,
Mic
it's
drop.
right. Exactly. But the subtitle is giving all genitals matter, and like it's more of a reference to later on. But the article itself is it's very evocative. I did not grow up with the feminine aspects of gender and whatever, and so like I have never been able to go through any of the experiences that I've heard of with regards to the female reproductive system.
Yeah, so part
Um,
of what I'm going through right now is likely linked to my PMDD. That's
yeah.
what it is for short, PMDD. Um,
And go
and
ahead.
it causes like it's very little is known about it in even in medicine, and it's barely at all understood or known outside of medicine,
Yeah,
and
I hadn't
that's a
heard
problem.
of it. You may have mentioned this to me before, but I hadn't heard this specific one. I don't remember hearing this specific, the premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I didn't remember hearing that before reading this article, so I'm glad the articles exist just for letting people know about it.
Yeah, so when I was growing up as a kid, going through all of these issues, I thought that I just had PMS. And I thought that there were women that just didn't have PMS and that their periods just had, some really light symptoms that were like reminiscent of what I went through, but like not really. And now I've learned in my adult years what I was going through was PMDD and what they were going through was PMS. PMS is normal. PMS is like every woman has some degree of PMS. Not every woman at, you know, starting around age 13 doubles over in agony before their period even starts.
Yeah,
Not
you,
every woman before they start the actual bleeding part goes into such a mood dysfunction that they literally could justify killing themselves. Like that's not actually PMS.
No, and it's interesting because it's one of those situations where like there's probably going to be women out there that are like, "Oh, I go through that," but they don't know the like
Exactly.
you're trying to use the words to describe how big the pain is, but like you're also like just relating exact events that happen to you. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And like there's going to be people that feel like, "Oh no, that's just PMS." And
But
it's like, "No,
yeah, that's the problem.
this is a different thing."
Like the people that think that this is PMS are exactly the way I was before I learned about PMDD. And this article wasn't what taught me about it. I actually learned about it about 5 years ago. And things started really making sense once I realized that there was an actual disorder that like explained all of it. And what we do know about it, there is a little bit that we do know about it. And what we do know about it is that there seems to be a correlation between the severity of the symptoms and a serotonin dysregulation. So,
Mm,
like, the body is during that week right before the menstrual cycle happens, the female body is it's using serotonin wrong in ways that are actually not harmful long term, because I don't think there's any like difference in life expectancy for it, but it's using it in ways that hurt physiologically.
hmm.
That cause pain or that cause mood swings. They don't understand the mechanism for why it's using serotonin in a weird way. They don't understand all the different ways of how it's using serotonin incorrectly. They do know that serotonin is the main component of PMDD because SSRIs are a very effective strategy at figuring out like how to manage it,
Right.
unless you don't want to take SSRIs or you can't, which this Ajah Hales, I never mentioned that that's who wrote it. I hope that her name is Ajah. It could be Ajah. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Um, but she can't take SSRIs. So, like, she can't
It,
take any of the medications that would help.
right, exactly. Like when as she was going through the specifics of her, her case, it seemed very difficult because like there's so many like we can give you this and it'll help, but not if this is true, and then if we can do this if that and that'll help, but not if this is true, and it's like all of those if not if this is true, those are all true for her, and it's
Right.
like wow, that's rough. That just it's the worst.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, she was able to explain the experience well enough that I feel like I understand. I certainly don't experientially understand, but I feel like I understand more in an intellectual way more
You
than
could
I ever
imagine
have
it.
before.
You can
And
envision it by
also,
what she gave.
I hope this isn't TMI about you, but like a lot of the stuff that I read in here, I'm like, that sounds really familiar.
Yeah.
And so, um, yeah, but she
Yeah.
also
No, that's
amazingly
actually
gave,
no. Before you go on, I just want to say that's
yeah.
actually extremely validating because I'm like I know that it sounds like me, but for you to say that, I'm like, see, that means that I'm not insane. I'm not just making shit up.
No, definitely not. This is the stuff that I've heard you talk about for years.
And
Um,
you've watched me
but
go through a lot of that.
and exactly. But she goes through and she like links studies and stuff, doesn't she, in this article, if I remember
Yeah, yeah.
correctly?
There's some studies I believe she puts in there, but there's not a whole lot of studies to be had, and that's kind of what the focus of this article is that we don't have a lot of information. We've like apparently the medical community has known about it for 30 plus years and nothing has really changed.
Yeah.
And that's scary. When they estimate potentially up to 30%, a third of women are dealing with this. They don't even know what the name of the disorder is. They think they're just having PMS.
Like really shitty PMS.
And we don't have any information about it.
And let's not gloss over the fact that up until very, very recently, and depending on where you live, maybe not even, it's still to this day, women are just regularly told to just get over
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
they're going through with their period. Like most of the time, a lot of people don't want to hear about it. Hopefully, that's getting better. I think it is getting better in certain areas,
Slowly,
but
yeah. But there are some doctors and some medical professionals that are always going to be that way. It comes from this misunderstanding about, okay, so we know physiologically that women have twice as many pain receptors as men. So we actually feel pain more acutely than men do. Like physiologically, this is just proven science. We have more ability to feel the pain, which means we feel it more deeply. Does that mean that our pain is invalid? Nope. It could mean the opposite. It could mean that men may not feel pain where they should be feeling pain, or they could be feeling pain in ways that could be really harmful that they can't sense, but women
a-
can.
and I'm sorry, just to add real quick, even though this is a woman-centric episode here, men are just regularly told to ignore their pain.
That's also true.
And so, like, we're like socially breeding it out of ourselves to feel pain at all. And it's
Right. Like,
ridiculous because pain is so important.
right. As if pain were somehow something that we were supposed to ignore. Like, what do you think the purpose of pain is?
My therapist said that to me very recently,
It's a good
almost in that
question.
almost in the exact same tone.
And so a lot. So I want to tell a story. Do you mind if I tell a personal story here?
Please go ahead, tell a story.
So I was with one of my sisters and my mom, and we were watching one of those, murder porns. What was it, SVU or whatever? And the episode, and I'm pretty sure I've told you this before. The episode had like some woman that her blood was found on a bed, and when they questioned her, she was like, "Yeah, I spontaneously started bleeding, and like I left right after that." And then so the episode continued on, and my sister was like, "Yeah, whatever. She's obviously lying. That's not even possible." And my mom and I looked at each other and looked over at her, and we were like, "That happens to us like literally every month. It doesn't just trickle out. It's like, oh, now you are gushing with, everything. Just
Right.
bleed everywhere."
You don't get some sort of fucking like internal brain reminder about it. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like
Well, my mom
it's
used to throw up right before she would have, the tsunamis. So she actually kind of did.
to
But
talk
I,
about a brain reminder, yeah.
right? But I don't. I don't have anything like that. I just have to remember to, prepare for that to happen. And it's really difficult sometimes. Sometimes I end up bleeding all over everything. And now I know that actually heavy bleeding like that is part of PMDD. So my whole family has had PMDD this whole time. I have a feeling that PMDD has some root or some correlation to my grandma's endometriosis and my potential adenomyosis, which are very similar things that also have very little information about them. So there's like this whole host of disorders that have to do with a uterus, not necessarily women, but a uterus, female
Right.
bodies that nobody's really got answers for, and nobody's really studying it.
Yeah.
And that
And
kind of ties into the subtitle of all genitals matter, because like we need to stop having this male centric medical system that is still to this day denying women.
yeah, I thought it was a real sick burn when the author was talking about like how there's an enormous amount of money that goes into research and production and popularization of ED medication,
Yeah.
where these things are not researched at all. It's
Now,
like,
I will say that I do believe that ED is a I'm not going to say serious disorder, but it is a life affecting disorder. And I'm not going to put that down and say that there shouldn't have been research or that there shouldn't be medications. But when we compare ED and the effects of it, which are they are serious,
sure,
there's a lot of
sure,
mental health difficulties that come along with that. But you compare that to women literally bleeding so much that they pass out, that they become anemic, that they because of PMDD, become extremely emotionally volatile without knowing why, without understanding what they can do about it. They end up in horrible, horrible pain before they've even started bleeding, which is where I'm at right now. And they don't have anything. And when they
Yeah.
go to the doctor, at least half the time, they're told that they're making a big deal out of nothing. Or, in my case, that I should just go to the hospital instead of them writing a $10 prescription.
Yeah, exactly. And it was very nice of you to, really talk about how ED actually affects people that have to deal with that situation and how painful and difficult it can be for them. But there's certainly going to be a lot of people that are like dismissing that as arbitrary and ridiculous because they're not thinking about how it actually affects people. And that's the reality that women have had to go through if their bodies aren't like perfectly normal with no irregularities
Right,
for the entire time,
right,
all of time.
right. And it's not just, oh, I can't do something. It's actively, there is something that is trying to claw out my insides and actively working to destroy me on a mental level. Like, pretty serious life altering circumstances.
Right. Because when your month is like 2.5 weeks of bleeding and like a week and a half of leading up to that bleeding, it's like that's your whole month.
Yeah, well,
That's
that was
everything.
hers. Mine is like now mine's the whole month. If I don't take progesterone, I am nonstop bleeding all the time.
Yeah. And she's, I think, talking about for a while she is on certain medications. I don't know if she was able to find any actually
I
now that I
don't
think about it,
remember.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't remember either. It was a really good but deep article. There was a lot of data in it, and I don't
Yeah,
retain
she was
all of it.
very vulnerable about her own situation and also added in some facts about, what we do know about it. But it was really
Right.
good. I totally I just want people to like go and read it because I'm very passionate about explaining to people that PMDD even exists.
Hmm.
Every time I mention it to somebody new, it is the first time they've ever heard of it.
Yeah. Well, good. Get the word out.
I will say, just as an aside, I love the article. I'm not super happy about the subtitle and how it's formed.
it,
It's
it
fine about all genitals matter. It's about the giving part because that doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how we're giving genitals matter. Genitals are already made of matter. So like I don't like linguistically I just don't feel like the words match up, but that is a very tiny part of the point and my brain just couldn't let it go.
Right, and she words so well in a lot of it that like, it's forgivable, but we
Right.
both did point at it. It's like, going and seeing the beautiful sculpture that is Michelangelo's David and just being like completely distracted by his ankles and just
Right.
looking at his ankles constantly.
Right.
These look funny. Is that what ankles look like?
I'm
That
sure
kind of
somebody has done that. I'm
thing.
sure somebody has. Okay,
Yeah.
so we can move on to the next one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Do you want to introduce this one? Because this one, I believe, is one you found.
Yeah, this is one I found. The article is called "What Quote Unquote Baby Reindeer," which is a Netflix show, means to someone who has been stalked and harassed the last 18 months by Bonnie J Sludikoff. I could be mispronouncing that. My apologies if I am. The subtitle is "Failing to Report Abuse Does Not Protect You, and it certainly does not protect others." So,
I'm going to real quick follow this one because I didn't follow her yet.
understood. Um, so this author watched the show Baby Reindeer.
Which we
And
haven't watched it.
no, I have no idea what it's about. Even well, I know a little bit because of the context, but it very clearly was about a person that had some sort of fame and had a stalker stalking him, and then the experiences of that event. And this author has also had a stalker, and it really hit her in a place that caused her to want to share her story, and also kind of do a little bit of a comparison. I think call out the film a little bit, but she also, allowed that most films have to fictionalize bits, or maybe this one intended to fictionalize bits. I didn't really catch that through reading the article.
Yeah, I got the impression that the series Baby Reindeer did intentionally fictionalize certain things, maybe because they were still worried about calling out the actual people, and because there was some talk in there about like the discussion of whether or not we should worry about calling out people who do like crimes like this. Like, this is a crime. So why
Hmm.
should they be protected from, like, that's on the news, you know? The most protection you get is allegedly. That is what your protection is. You don't get protection on, your name not being said. If you
Right.
are suspected of a crime, you get to be suspected of a crime in public. So, yeah, I kind of agree. I don't know if like protecting the name is really important. But the guy who wrote it, I assume, was the same guy that had been stalked, and that was his decision. As a writer,
Yeah.
you get that choice. I'd probably make the same choice myself, honestly.
Yeah, because at a certain point, it's like it's a little, that you're attacking, or at least you're pointing, if you go ahead and name somebody, and he just may not have been willing to do that. Also, I can't truly like say that I certainly haven't experienced anything in the way of stalking, but I like if someone has followed you everywhere and surprised you in many ways and like badmouthed you to the point where like other people have been involved with it, and like when you feel harassed, like you're chased in every moment, like you probably just want to do anything to not have to mention it. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Yeah,
To a
and you
certain
also don't want to
extent,
poke the bear.
in a certain way,
Like,
and
I
it's
want
like
to tell my
certainly,
story, but I don't necessarily want that person to know that I'm telling my story. So, like, maybe I
especially in
just
this
don't use their name.
especially in this climate of this world right now, where if you say something about somebody specific, you might have a mob that goes and attacks them for no reason.
Right? Or it comes back to attack you because you don't know what, like, maybe his stalker has their own audience. You don't
It may
know.
be.
It could be
Absolutely.
crazy. And the interesting thing about this one is that she took a story about a guy being stalked by a woman, and, like, I know that that is sort of, that's an anomaly. It's not as common. But it's not really gendered necessarily in what happens to the person being stalked, but it is gendered in the sense that more women get stalked than men.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm sure that there's a lot of talk about it. I mean, you get to hear about like some of the famous women that have been stalked and how terrible it is, especially if you like get into people's stories, if you want to, for celebrities. I know streamers that have had less than 200 like viewers at a time that get stalked and have to move and change things to try and get away from them. But you know what the main media portrayal I remember of someone being so into someone that they go crazy a little bit, that they lose their mind?
Bones?
Fucking Misery. Did
Misery.
you ever
I
see
don't.
Misery?
No.
I can't remember the name of the actress. It was the same actress that was in Fried Green Tomatoes. Um, and it was a portrayal of someone who liked a writer so much that I don't remember how it happened, but the writer ended up in her house and she basically like captured and tortured him until he wrote the next book or something,
Excuse me.
maybe.
That's
It was
scary.
spoilers for Misery. Um, I think a movie made in the 70s or 80s. Uh, but that's the big portrayal of someone that is such a fan that they're willing to go to lengths that no one wants, right? And that's the one that you can really point to and say that. Of course, obviously, people don't know it anymore, apparently. But yeah, the remember the do you know the hype around the Beatles and everything like that?
Hmm.
Everyone had that whole hype around the Beatles, like it's men getting swarmed by women, but they love it typically. But like on the other side, the ugly other side of that is that women get all this attention that they don't want from people that feel like they know or have the right to be a part of that person's life, and it
Well,
happens fucking all time.
And the reality even of like the Beatles is that they only like it when they like the other person. They got they got their own stalkers. It's just that the Beatles had people managing that crap. So it wasn't them by themselves. And the reality of women is that they don't have to be famous for somebody to have that feeling, that depth of feeling to stalk them. And they certainly don't have a manager or producer trying to keep them safe. They just have themselves. Maybe they have a husband if they're lucky, or a significant other that's, non-binary or female. But even in those cases, that doesn't necessarily protect them.
No, absolutely not. And that's why the response to catcalling in women is so varied, because a lot of those women are going to understand that catcalling potentially just means that guy's going to say a few words and laugh to his buddies, but who knows? Maybe he thought he saw something in you and now
Right.
he's going to fucking follow you home.
Right.
And
And I'm sorry.
go ahead.
And I felt like the main message that Bonnie was trying to get at with this article was that we need to stop protecting the people that are doing the abuse. We need to
And it's
start
interesting.
talking about it and telling other people this person did this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really happy with how Bonnie did portray her own stalker, because um, she was respectful, and she was saying that, like, I don't want him to be like hurt or imprisoned or anything necessarily. It depends on the imprisonment. I don't know how far he went, but it, I just want him to not be able to hurt himself or others. Do you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like there was a lot of respect shown to the stalker as a human, not necessarily as the specific person and what they want or care for or dream about life, but as a human being, showing that respect to somebody that has wronged her for years, if I remember correctly,
So I
about a year and a half.
after reading this article with you, I started wondering, like, am I doing the world a disservice by not calling out the guy that raped me? Um I don't know. I know that his father was in politics, and that's as far as I want to go into that, because from what I gathered, like, if I were to mention his name, it could cause a lot of trouble for me because I don't know how big in politics that man is anymore. I don't know. I don't know
Right.
what systems they have to silence people, you know? And so that was like that was a big fear for me, because like it's one thing if the guy is just, a normal guy, and yeah, they may still have some power, like, they are, I don't know, head of the volleyball team or whatever, like they might have
Hmm.
some clout. But having a relative that's in politics, or having a relative that is a police officer, like those get into some places where like saying something gets dangerous for the person, for the whistleblower.
Yeah, it can, and it doesn't even have to just be those. There's other places that you don't even know that you could come into contact with danger in that regard. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like it's a concerning thing, absolutely.
So, but
And in your
I got the feeling that she would be understanding of my situation, be like, no, yours is probably the situation where it's reasonable to not, because the political climate of the world right now, it's not ready for people like me to take that risk. Because if I take that risk, I'm just going to disappear. It's not going to really make a difference.
Her general point, though, certainly circumstances are going to matter, but her general point that, like, if you're being attacked, if you're being abused, if you're being stalked, if especially if whoever is doing this is breaking laws, then if you can find a support system to help you report that,
Right.
please do. It
Right.
only does all of us a favor for the abuser to get help, at least, you know,
Or for
because
maybe future victims to not have to
get
go through
abused.
that.
Right, exactly. And whether the abuser is beyond help and needs to be locked up or can be helped, because not all abusers are beyond help. We can definitely help people out there.
Right.
But sometimes people are beyond a certain point. But whatever's done, it just helps all of society. But I don't want to underscore how difficult it is to step up when you're being abused. I
Right.
totally get it. It's very difficult.
Right. And I feel like she respectfully towed the line between trying to give a public outcry to say speak up more and also understanding that like there are certain cases where you can't, and that's
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah.
And then we
Good.
move on to the last one,
Yep.
which we usually try to make it happy. And there's a little bit of happy in it, but I'm sorry, this is kind of a a heavy hitting episode.
It was definitely a heavy-hitting article. You can go
Yeah.
ahead and say the name of it if you want to.
The article is called I Said Yes to Fetal Reduction by I am going to butcher this name and I'm really sorry. Aabha Gopan. I don't know
Yeah.
if that's how it's actually pronounced. If please correct me, please. um, but Abha talked about her experience years back. This is not a current thing that happened, and I wouldn't expect it to be. I don't think you can write about something like this right after it happens. I think you have to get a few years under your belt of really processing what happened and accepting things. Um, and she kind of walks you through the process of her being pregnant, finding out at I think their first ultrasound that there's triplets, and then almost immediately learning that the type of triplets that they wouldn't be viable, and they had to make a decision to have a fetal reduction, which
Which,
is what it sounds like.
yeah, but I am going to still explain it to a certain extent because I didn't get it right away because I'm a silly person, don't understand words. Ben's back, by the way. Hi, Ben. Good
Welcome
timing.
back, Ben. Good
Um,
timing. You came back for the really heavy one.
yeah. So, you know, fetal reduction is not like some people would think that that's a nice word for abortion, and it is not. It is when
Abortion
there
ends a
are
pregnancy.
right
Reduction reduces the number of fetuses
children, right,
in the
fetuses
pregnancy,
in a
but it
pregnancy.
does not end the pregnancy. It's actually done to maintain the pregnancy.
Because I mean, I don't know how many people know twins, but having twins is not it's not easy. Having kids is not easy, period. But having twins is significantly more difficult from what I understand. And there have probably been a lot of women over the years that have died just trying to have multiple children at the same time. And triplets, my goodness.
And
My
she didn't even
goodness.
do anything. Like, she didn't do IVF. She wasn't on medication. There was nothing that she did to increase the number of eggs that were released for this to even happen. This was literally one of those miracle moments.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it was also a scenario where if they had done nothing, they were probably going to, at the worst or at the best, at the absolute best, one of the triplets was going to be severely impacted and malformed. At
right,
worst, they could lose all of them, and it was
right.
really high chance that that was going to happen.
Yeah, if this had been 150 years ago or more, like this woman would have potentially died in childbirth and would have had probably a regular, like a, I would say, how do I say it correctly? Like a, a, um, a regular human baby. I don't know, regular seems judgmental in that context, but then also like potentially conjoined twins or twins that died very shortly after childbirth. Like there's a whole
I don't
bunch of
think these
negative
were
things.
conjoined, but it does say somewhere in there that she did end up having, even with having to do the fetal reduction, she ended up with preeclampsia, which is high blood pressure, I believe,
Hmm.
that only happens during pregnancy. It's a type of high blood pressure condition, and it would not, like, the baby that she did end up being able to save was in danger from that.
Yeah, she
Having
almost
three of them, she would not have survived, and the babies would not have survived.
Right, and she couldn't know that beforehand. And this is such a vulnerable article about the feeling of the decision. By the way, I looked up at the end. When she's writing it, she's referring to her 7 month old. So she
Oh, I
wrote
thought
it.
it was 7 years.
Yeah, just like
Wow, that
a
is
little over
still
six
pretty
months after.
recent then.
Yeah, but still 7 months to
Yeah,
get past it.
it's
The
not a lot of
emotion,
time. There's probably still some processing to be had there, but
but yeah, and she was, she cared about the lives that her and her partner had produced, and even though, like, can you imagine you're even trying for a baby and all of a sudden you hear you're gonna have three, like the feeling of, like, oh my God, all the logistics that then have to be changed. You know what I mean?
right.
Like everything changes in your life, even if you were planning to have kids. Imagine if you weren't. But she was just so good about being able to take us through how she felt through the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
I felt it right there with
The
her.
vulnerability was spot on through this whole thing. I don't
Hmm.
feel that she went too far, and I didn't find any place that I felt like she could have gone farther. It was perfect. The amount of vulnerability in it, and then just the conclusions that she came to were her own. She didn't like try to tell people how to feel about it. It was, I don't know, it was a really well done article. This article is just amazing.
Yep, absolutely. Ah,
I know.
hey, how's it going?
The biggest positive that we have from there is that she was able to save one of the children.
And she had such a positive outlook on the life going forward,
Right.
like raising her child and being her miracle baby. Because at the end of the day, like she said, as she said in the article, like she had that. I don't. You knew the word. I don't remember the word. The difficulty with the pregnancy as it was that would have potentially
Oh,
taken all of their lives.
preeclampsia.
Yeah, that, and living through that and your child living through that is amazing to begin with. So,
Yep.
yep,
Yep.
check out all these good articles we've mentioned because they're good articles, and we
Yeah.
mentioned them.
And well, I'll have those on the articles now on the website because I did
Hmm.
that.
Yep, the website is updating.
It's not
Absolutely.
up to date right now, now that I think about it, because I didn't do it after the last episode. But it's,
And that's why.
I'm
That's
like a
why.
week behind on them. It's fine.
That's why I said updating.
Yeah, it's updating.
It's kind of constantly updating. You're kind of tweaking it a lot recently, so
Well, I'll be doing that
check that out.
less going forward because that was mostly because I was doing a lot of things for April.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, that's
but
true.
but I
Yeah,
will
yeah,
stay. I will have to stay up to date on the articles for these episodes.
yeah. Hmm.
Yep, yep, yep.
I think that rounds out our episode. Oh, we've lost Ben. Ben has left again. Probably
Oh,
to eat the Chinese food, maybe.
maybe.
But
Well,
but
I'll say my little spiel. Are you ready?
oh, okay, yeah.
I wanted to thank Ben, Ulancy, and even Sierra and Lane, even though he didn't stick around for very long, both of them for being part of the live recording. If you, dear listener, would like to join in the live action fun, visit themonsteralley.com. We've got the Spotify links to specific episodes, we've got the article links, we've got merch, bunch of other stuff. But more importantly, you can get your invite to the Alley's Discord server and join us in the stage channel on a weekly basis when we do these recordings. So visit themonsteralley.com today. It's TheMonsteralley.com. It'll make us super happy. And as a bonus, you'll get a thanks at the end of each episode if you join, if you're here during the recording.
Heck
Ta
yeah.
da! How'd I
Was that
do?
the spiel? You did great. To add on to that, we really appreciate your time and attention. I'm eternally mortal, and I hope you find smiles this day.
And I'm the Accidental Monster. You can find us both on medium.com and follow yourself always.